Hi, I'm Dr. David Dobson. Welcome to Conversations. Today, my guest is Miguel Vissers. Miguel is a doctoral researcher at the Department of Communication Studies at the University of Antwerp. Today, we will discuss his PhD research, which focuses on the newsworthiness of scientific research in traditional media. It's a pleasure to have you on my show, Miguel.
It's great to be here. I'm really excited actually. I was really glad you invited me because I heard a couple of colleagues of mine came on here and they all were enthusiastic about it. So I'm glad I can be here.
Miguel, all of your university education, like your undergraduate, graduate, now your doctoral, and research has focused on communication studies. Tell us why you are interested in this field.
Yeah, indeed, everything I have studied or I'm studying right now is about communication. And it might be cliche, but I feel communication is everywhere. And I feel it's what drives us as humans and what drives us as a society or keeps us together. Also can create some polarization as well, of course. But I do feel it's everywhere. And specifically media in all its forms interests me, both in how it affects us, but also in how we can use it or how we can utilize it to reach other people. For example, now you are on the other side of the world and we can have this conversation. And I think it's
Yeah.
so interesting that we can do this as humans one to one.
Mm,
Um, and specifically throughout all my education and my research, it's mostly journalism that has interested me, and specifically journalism studies.
mm, wonderful. Miguel, your PhD research looks into newsworthiness of health and COVID-19 research in traditional media. Could
Mhm.
you share why you chose this topic?
Yeah, I did not really choose a topic because I there was a vacancy
Okay,
for a position on a project by
okay,
my two supervisors, Gert-Jan de
okay,
Bruin and Steve Paulussen.
okay.
Um, and when I saw it, I immediately wanted to do it because I think the theory of newsworthiness is a really interesting theory in
Yeah,
journalism studies.
yeah.
And at the same time, not a lot of it has been used to explain science communication. And
Mm,
I must say, science communication is another passion of mine. And this combination of both really sparked an interest. And I was like, okay, I want to go for this. And I immediately applied. So,
wonderful. Uh, you mentioned there is a lot of science research available, but not all make it to the news.
mhm,
And that's why you are studying this newsworthiness. Can you
mhm.
explain why is that the case?
Yeah, that's a big question, of course. Why does not everything make the news? And there are obviously a number of factors. First
Yeah.
and foremost, there's just a bunch of science, which is really good. I'm really
Mm,
glad so many people have the chance to work in academia, and I think it should be more. I think there should be more funding for academia as well to really utilize this process to further our understanding of science. But as a result, there is a lot of research. If I just look at my own university, the University of Antwerp claims to have 3,650 peer-reviewed studies each year. So
wow.
that would mean if everything makes the news, we would have 10 studies of only the University of Antwerp in the news every day. And I think people would get totally overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Uh, so that's one thing.
Mm,
On the other side, there's also practical considerations.
mm,
Journalists don't have a lot of time to uh, do a lot of research. They
mm,
have to produce more output with less resources, with less
mm,
time, and they also do
yeah.
not often have the expertise to like really
Mm,
judge the
mm,
scientific research.
yeah.
So those are things. But the
Mm,
main thing or the main goal of my
mm,
research is understanding if there are certain factors that increase the chance of becoming news, where I look at science, whether it has certain characteristics that
yeah.
influences the selection,
Mm,
and where I also look at journalists and
mm,
will talk to them
mm,
to see, well, what makes it for you interesting to write about it.
yeah.
And then there's then also a second part where
Yeah.
I look at how they make the news more newsworthy by
Mm,
adding certain words or
mm,
changing the discourse. So
okay.
how they sell it to us as
Mm,
newsworthy.
yeah. Yeah. I'm just wondering, do you think perhaps there may be a little problem because now we are relying our science research to be selected by the journalists, which they think is interesting on their point of view or what interesting for their readers?
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't say there's necessarily a problem, but there could be.
Mm,
And it's also this tension I want to explore a little bit in my PhD,
yeah.
because I notice in the current paper I'm writing, we
Mm,
as scholars, and especially
mm,
the university, still
mm,
has a lot of power.
yeah.
It's due to the fact that journalists
Yeah.
don't have a lot of
Mm,
time to write
mm,
their articles, that they
yeah.
rely on press
Mm,
releases a lot.
mm,
And if the university writes a really good press release,
mm,
it often just gets copied.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
so we also still have a chance to make a story that
Mm,
might make the news.
yeah.
And at the same time, I think we should not problematize journalists too much,
Okay.
because I do feel they are our allies and they
Yeah.
are the ones who could actually get our word out there.
Mm, mm,
There are definitely some problems like exaggeration of
mm,
the certain findings, but
mm.
these exaggerations can actually also come from press releases. So we have to see
You're
where the
right.
problem actually lies. So
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. I want to go back, yeah, to your study. You are studying the newsworthiness in traditional media. Why
yeah,
did you choose traditional media?
yeah. Well, first and foremost, it's just because I have a really big interest in journalism, and
Okay.
so
Okay.
that's what led me to traditional media. But
Okay.
also, there's a more literature-based idea about behind it.
Okay.
Traditional media, thus newspapers and news sites, and also
Mm,
television news,
mm,
uh, are still an important factor for
mm.
science news, especially
Okay.
in the beginning of COVID-19.
Mm,
A lot
mm,
of people gravitated back
mm,
to these traditional media
mm.
as their source of information. So
Okay.
they are still relevant for
Mm,
science communication.
okay.
And I think it's also an interesting way to really study
Mm,
the process from press
yeah.
release to news article. I think it
Right.
offers a lot of opportunities as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, because as you said, when we're looking for the especially the science news, we probably go to traditional media because we know that the media's those medias has been vetted and there is a journalism is involved. Whereas in the new digital media, perhaps there is no vetting is involved, so we cannot justify or rely on the source of those news. Is that's
Yeah.
the reason why? Because
Yeah.
lots of going on in digital media is right now.
Yeah, I think digital media also have their opportunities, definitely. And
Yeah.
people are increasingly distrusting traditional media, which I think
Mm.
is a shame, because I
Oh.
don't
Mm.
think there's a
Mm.
large
Mm.
conspiracy behind
Yeah.
traditional media or anything.
Yeah.
But for like really getting the message out there, I feel
Yeah.
traditional media are so
Yeah.
fundamental, and they
Yeah.
should indeed be the place where people
Yeah.
think, okay, the source has
Mm.
been checked,
Mm.
there
Yeah.
was a journalist involved, and it's not
Yeah.
just a random post on
Yeah.
X or a random podcast where
Yeah.
anyone can say
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah.
At the same time, I do think these new media, well, I call them new, even though social media have been around for quite a
Yeah.
long time,
Yeah.
uh, are also something we as scientists should use.
Yeah.
We are well, not we are the experts, and we
Mm.
should try to get our message in the stream there,
Mm.
because it could give others a chance to
Mm.
access science
Mm.
instead of
Mm.
maybe, yeah, getting
Mm.
flooded by
Mm.
pseudoscience or
Mm.
misinformation or
Mm.
disinformation. So we
Mm.
also should be on social media, I feel.
Yeah. Yeah. I know you are very active in social media, yeah, and someone can really read more about your research by looking at your social media posts because you regularly write about your research on the social media.
Yes, and also conversations like these, I think this
Yeah,
is what you do is a
yeah,
really good thing.
yeah,
That's why I immediately wanted to participate, because you already have tried to really build this,
yeah,
but you also
yeah.
put so much effort into
Mm,
this to get the message of so many
mm,
researchers out
mm,
there. And
mm,
I really applaud you for that. I
mm,
think it should be highlighted more. What an
mm,
amazing job you are doing here.
mm.
So
Thank you,
thank you.
Miguel. Thank you. Appreciate for your kind words. Miguel, I want to talk about your research design. What is your research approach to study your research topic?
Yeah. So I'll explain it as briefly as possible. So simply said, I look at press releases, I look at
Mm,
news articles.
mm,
Those are my main
mm,
topics to study,
yeah,
and I'll also talk to journalists, which will be interviews. Mostly, I'll use
yeah.
content analysis of
Mm,
both these press releases and the news
okay.
articles to
Yeah.
like compare them, but also
Mm,
see what's
mm,
where,
mm,
so I can maybe test
mm,
which what could be in
yeah.
the press release that makes it a higher chance of being selected, and also
Yeah.
what changes in the process.
Yeah.
And all of that starts from the theory of newsworthiness,
Mm,
like I said, which is based on an idea of both selection and
mm,
construction.
mm.
Um, and that's mostly it for my PhD.
Yeah. Oh, very good. Obviously, so much we can do in our PhD. So definitely
Yeah,
a nice design. Uh, so I want to go back to your content analysis. Your first study is based on
yeah,
quantitative content analysis
yeah.
of all press releases during the COVID-19 pandemic. And
Yes.
congratulations, you also published this study.
Thank you.
Can you share what you learned from the content analysis?
Yes, I definitely can, and I really like this study actually to do
Okay.
it. It was all the press releases from the University of Antwerp during
Yeah.
the COVID-19 pandemic.
Mm, yeah.
Um, And the reason I started this study was to understand university press release communication a bit more,
Yeah.
because in literature, there is talked about, there's spoken about press releases by
Mm,
universities, but I
mm,
often feel like everything is thrown together a little bit. And I
yeah.
wanted to clarify a bit, like what is science communication, what is
Mm,
institutional
mm,
communication, do we
mm,
have subdivisions in these two
mm,
categories?
mm,
I came up with some subdivisions. I'm
mm,
not saying it will be generalizable to all universities,
mm,
but so I noticed already that there are multiple categories within university press release communication, which I thought was interesting. And at the
mm,
same time,
mm,
which I also learned is, even though COVID-19 was everywhere, the
yeah.
news was completely flooded with COVID-19. The
Yeah.
university did not only talk about
Mm,
COVID-19, there was
mm,
still so much more. More than 40% of all the press releases by the University of Antwerp did not
yeah.
mention COVID-19 anywhere, which was so
Interesting.
interesting to me. I
Mm,
was like, wow, that's it's so much left next to COVID-19. And also, which I also thought was interesting, also close to 40% is not about research,
mm,
which shows that the
mm,
university is more than just a scientific institute. It's a place where people work, it's a place
yeah.
where people go to study.
Yeah.
So a university is just more than churning out
Yeah.
research.
Yeah.
It's a place to be.
Yeah. 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 Which makes sense. So I think you can take this similar analysis and kind of superimpose to even corporation also companies because perhaps they're not just talking about their shares and stock prices, but they're also talking about other social,
Yeah,
sustainable or things they're working on.
indeed. And I think it's interesting to clarify this a bit, that
Yeah.
because I do feel like people, like in the broad public, people know, there's researchers at the university and people go to study there, but it's also in the communication of these universities.
Yeah.
And I think that's good to know in a way.
Yeah. 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 Um, Now, after content analysis, what are you going to do next for your
Yeah.
PhD research? What's next?
Um, what's next? Yes, there's always the good question. What's next? What's the next paper? When are we going to publish one more? No, I still like what I'm doing, so
Yeah,
I'm glad to share this. I
yeah.
will be working on content analysis a bit more.
Okay.
So now I did a content analysis of only the press releases and
Yeah,
more on like an abstract level, what are they about? And
yeah.
now I'll dive into them. I'll do a content analysis of the press releases
Mm,
and of news articles, or the news
okay.
articles that are based on these press releases. And I'll
All
take the
right.
theory of newsworthiness as my coding background.
Okay.
That's what I will do with
Mm,
like the case study of the
mm,
University of Antwerp in
yeah,
Flanders. And then after that, me and my supervisors will try, I'm
yeah.
saying try, to make an automated content analysis,
Oh,
like
nice.
computer assisted, on a
Okay.
larger European scale. So
Okay.
we want to see if we can automatically go to newsworthiness. That's
Okay.
something that will be a challenge. So there will
Yeah.
be computational linguistics and machine learning and all
Yeah.
that. So some things I will still have to explore, but I'm really
Yeah.
excited for it.
Yeah.
And then as an end study for my PhD, I'll
Yeah.
start talking to journalists. I'll be like,
Mm.
okay, these are my findings.
Yeah.
Take me through the process of
Yeah.
writing a science
Yeah.
article.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then we'll just go back and forth. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I found
Yeah.
this, explain this a little bit more. And then that should
Yeah.
wrap it up nicely.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Excellent. You what you're doing. And actually, you just already mentioned. I wanted to ask you that do you plan to interview the journalists, and you said you would. What about
Yeah.
the press releases from the university? Obviously, this communication department in the university they releases this press. Do you also plan to talk to those people within the communication department? Like, how do they choose those
Yeah.
releases, and what stuff they put on those releases?
Yeah, it's really good that you asked that. I actually forgot to mention that the plan is also to
Yeah,
incorporate them in the same study as with the
yeah.
journalists to
Okay.
compare their
Yeah.
logic as well,
Yeah,
because I do feel the theory
yeah,
of newsworthiness has been
yeah,
used a lot on like news
yeah,
articles,
yeah,
but I feel the press office also
yeah,
uses this theory
mm,
subconsciously. They're like,
yeah,
okay, what will make the news? And we'll
yeah,
try to write like that. And
yeah,
often, also shown in literature,
yeah,
people in a press office
yeah,
are often former journalists, which is
yeah, yeah,
interesting.
yeah,
They have been in the sector and they know how
yeah,
the sector works, which
yeah,
means they'll probably use what they know in their new
yeah,
job.
yeah, yeah.
So,
And I'm sure that people in the communication at the university, they also probably had connection in the journalism world as well, as you said, because
yeah,
they also have kind of similar background or they involved in some degree of journalism. So yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, interesting. Yeah, because as you talk about the university communication department, because university doing several things, and they can't write press releases for each and everything, so they probably have to decide what should they publish or what should they write about.
Mhm. Yeah, indeed. Like I said, only at the University of Antwerp, there are 3,650 publications each year.
Yeah,
A selection has to be made.
yeah,
Also, the communication department at this university is quite
yeah,
small, so
yeah,
even more decisions have to
yeah,
be made. And I think I
yeah,
really want to explore that, and I want to explore that in different universities, and also with talking to different journalists, how
yeah,
like they are having connections as well. Like they just call and they're like, "Hey, I need a new press release," or how does it
yeah,
work? I really want
yeah.
to uncover how it all works.
Yeah, yeah, great. Miguel, you are still on your doctoral journey, and I'm sure
Yeah.
you're going to do a lot. What do you hope to contribute?
Well, it's that's yeah. Obviously, I want to change the world, but I'll try to diminish my goals a little bit. I definitely want to like combine theory and practice.
Mm, mm,
Like you are doing. I want to help others in getting their work out there. I want to
yeah,
talk to people about my
mm,
research, but I want to
mm,
talk about their research.
mm,
I want to also further the
mm,
understanding of like the newsworthiness part
yeah,
in
yeah,
order to maybe help press offices
yeah,
in writing good press releases
mm,
that make the news without oversimplifying
yeah,
the science, because I still think it's really important to have the science sound and well
mm,
written.
mm,
So I want to be there, and at the same time, I
mm,
obviously want to expand theory
mm,
with regards to science communication and
yeah,
newsworthiness.
yeah, yeah,
So those are my main goals.
yeah.
Yes.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Miguel, what is your advice to researchers who wish to study this topic further?
Yeah, I think there's still a really a lot to study. There are so many different contexts,
Mm,
topics,
mm,
practices to explore.
yeah.
I think there is a nice gap to
Mm,
explore like upcoming media, online
yeah.
media, and science communication. I think podcasts and
Yeah.
social media are also, I'll call them new again or emerging
Yeah.
for science communication. And I think there's a lot to learn there. So I would definitely encourage people to go there. I have some nice colleagues working around the topic as well, and they really have good research. And it adds to the whole story. I have the traditional media, they have the new media. It adds to the whole idea of science communication. Um, and also studying like scientific literacy of the general
Mm,
public would
mm,
also be a good thing because
mm,
there is research about it. But
mm,
often I still, when I'm working on a paper, I think like, well, is this effective?
Mm,
Do people actually get more scientifically literate? And I don't want to sound like an iron tower because I also don't know about, I don't know, nuclear physics or whatever. So
yeah.
it's it's something. Scientific literacy can go can be about a
Mm,
lot of things, and I think we
mm,
should really study that. And yeah, I want to also advise researchers who
mm,
will start working on this. If you work on science communication, I
mm,
definitely feel you should do science communication,
yeah.
but also others, please talk about your research. It's so
Yeah.
important.
Yeah. Yeah. Wonderful, Miguel. Thank you for your time, Miguel. I wish you
Thank
all the
you.
best in completing your PhD.
Thank you. Thank you once more, David, for inviting me. And please keep this up. I'll keep on watching, and I hope many others will come to your show and will share what they are doing.